VAR in Singapore football is a bit like, you know when you go to a really rundown hawker centre and it's falling apart, but they've got that Stylo Milo cleaner that costs about $10,000, you know, that cleaning robot. And you're thinking, forget the robot, you know, the roof of the hawker centre's falling down, fix the hawker centre. Welcome back to Yahoo Footballing Weekly Part 2. We just covered Part 1 with Daniel Bennett here talking about Wrexham and English Premier League. Now we're going to get stuck into Part 2, Han Keong. Right. Singapore football and what's been happening. Should we do the comments first?
Let's do the comments first.
Thank you again. More than 200,000 views just on TikTok alone. Hundreds and hundreds of comments. Let's get stuck into the first one, which is probably my favourite comment of the week.
It's probably the funniest comment. I mean, from Double O, or Oo, whatever. Chinese mostly not good at sports involving legs. They mostly good in sports that involves hand, like ping pong, badminton, all that. I mean,
all right. As a resident Chinese person on the table, you can go first. Then we'll ask the guy who's played with many Chinese people. I don't know where to go with this.
I'm speechless. I mean, it's true. I mean that the Chinese diaspora are more involved in badminton or ping pong, but come on, this is not a stereotyping session. I mean, obviously there are people who can play using their legs. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
You work with local kids all the time.
I was just going to say that with Active SG, I see loads of fantastic young Chinese boys.
Any
girls.
issues with their legs?
They work fantastically well. And as long as they want to use them to play football and not sit at home, then they work fantastically well on the football field, yes.
Thanks, Double. You give us a good laugh.
Yeah. I would just mention there was this lad called Lu Xiang who won the gold medal
hurdles
for China in 110-meter hurdles, became a national icon. And I think that he used his legs to clear the hurdles. I think
thick muscular legs.
As lame excuses go for the majority race not really participating in the local game.
This is a good one.
That's right up there, but that's my favourite comment. All right, brilliant. Thank you for that. Great comment. Right, next one.
And now we have a sob story.
Right.
I can't pronounce that.
Go on.
Whatever.
Close enough.
So it says, I disagree. When I was younger, I had aspirations to be a pro footballer along with my brother and many other friends that I played with back then. But there was no support whatever from the government, and the sports scene in Singapore was not quite developed then. I remember a story about a youth who signed for Fulham FC and was prepared to go for EPL, top flight of English football, but he had to serve NS and he had to choose to revoke his citizenship or play professionally or give up his dream just to serve.
Obviously, he's referring to Ben Davis there, who I think is now back in Thailand, right? He's playing football.
Yeah, but he's playing for Oxford.
Thailand. Oxford, yeah,
Oxford,
okay.
But he's playing, now his nationality is Thai.
All right. Now, again, I've got to throw this one to Dan. Aspirations to become a pro footballer. You did it, and you actually did it a longer way. You went and studied first. You went back to
I went to Loughborough University, yeah.
That's right, and then became a professional.
Yes.
Okay. How hard is it to be a pro footballer in Singapore?
Going by the lads I've seen at Active SG, and then when they hit about 11, 12, it looks pretty tough, actually. I think there's a lot of pressure on the kids in school, from the parents as well, to get the academics sorted first. And then obviously when you hit 18, you go into national service. So there are disruptions on the way. Hopefully in the future things will change. I mean, the mindset has got to change, and we're hoping that the education and the sports can go hand in hand. I did that. I did an IB diploma at United World College in Singapore, went on to play for Loughborough University, which was a top sports university, so we had a lot of good players there. And then I was fortunate enough to be offered a contract here in Singapore by Balestier, and then I took it from there. So definitely possible. But the mindset has got to change a little bit, and we're hoping that we can slowly do that.
Follow up from that. When you are looking at these young lads at Active SG, what we often hear is they get to a certain age and then they literally drop off a cliff. You don't see them anymore. Studying intervenes, they get closer to O levels, and then they just fall away. Do you see this at Active SG, or do you see kids staying on a bit longer now?
I've been working with Active SG for 4 years, and some of the boys I had in my under 10s to start with, I lost them, and I was very disappointed. You know, they move on to maybe different academies, and then you're asked what happened to them, and then they say they've stopped. But to see that kind of talent, which I saw in a couple of them, just disappear was a shame. And it's about tracking those players, I think, and speaking to the parents and monitoring them a little bit more closely. And then I believe with a little bit of a mindset change, then we can get those kids coming through to an older age, taking it a little bit more seriously. And this is what I think is definitely happening at Lion City now. I've seen it. My son is at Lion City, and the boys there seem very dedicated. They have a lot of support from the club. They have people on site who can help them with their work, and they get them down 4 or 5 times a week for training. And nobody's late. People are all working hard, and there's really good mentality there.
And that's what parents want to see. We talk about this word pathway. It's like my favourite word. Parents want to see a pathway, don't they? If they can see that there is a way to balance the football training with the studies, they might be more willing to let a child see it through. Yeah. It's a long-term process. But as long as someone like Lion City Sailors and others, have a template, a model, whatever you want to call it, to show that we can legitimately balance the two, it gives us a bit of hope, right?
Definitely. I think we need more clubs like Lion City, which is obviously not easy. Lion City have a good owner who willing to put the money where the mouth is, and we really hope. Like last week, we talked about sponsorship in local football. There will be more sponsors pulled in, and then maybe things can start to change, and then you change the mindset, and then you cast the net a bit wider, and people don't drop off as much as before.
I think it's important that the carrot at the end of the tunnel is there as well. At the moment, we don't really have that with the league, and hopefully in the future, if the league is revamped, then there is something to look forward to. There's a pathway for players and parents to see that it's a viable pathway, and I think that is what we really want at the moment and is in the pipeline. I think it will happen, and that's exciting for Singapore football, that there will be a pathway for players to move into, and that's why I support my son playing. I think by the time he gets a little bit older, we will have an exciting league.
That's the key point, isn't it? Right there. That is the key point, because I've met so many parents who've said, I love football. I'd love my kid to be a professional footballer, and he's quite talented, and I'll support his studies. But if there's nowhere for him to earn a living at the end of it, with the best will in the world, I can't let him go all the way, can I? He's got to have a career at the end of this.
Exactly. So, things are changing, but I think it's moving slowly, but hopefully it keeps on moving.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Right, now moving on. Now this is a key point. What we talked about last week about atmosphere and how we were talking about DPMN Brunei, and we thought it was a little bit of a lame excuse to suggest that we needed DPMN Brunei to give Singaporeans a sense of an away day atmosphere when we should be able to generate that at home. And so Taufik Daud, if I've said it correctly, says, watch the Singapore Cup final between Hougang and Tampines. The atmosphere was not bad. Maybe give it time. Taufik Daud, I could not agree with you more. Anyone who listens to this or read my work, sorry Dan, I'm a big fan of Hougang over the years, partly because they're my local team, but partly because I've always believed for 25 years any team in any country, whether it's Wrexham or Hougang, must build organically, which means Hougang United, Hougang Stadium, Hougang Town, Hougang Community Centre, Hougang. You can't have obscure names that don't relate to the community, and then you can't up a club and dump it over here. You must build it organically. And Hougang does have the Hougang Howlies, has a committed, hardcore fan base. They've been in place for many years now. It is always a good atmosphere at the Hougang Stadium. Would that be fair, Dan? He's not going to agree with me. I don't know. We'll get him on that. Tampines, to bring those up. Tampines, back in the day when I used to help out Tanjong Pagar, there was a local, hardcore fan base at all of the major Singapore clubs, and you have to build and work on that. It takes time, but it is there, and you've just got to keep going. What do you think, Dan?
I agree, but I mean, at the moment, I think we're going through a phase where certain stadiums need to be what do you call it?
Revamped?
Yeah,
renovated?
Renovated.
They're a mess, Dan. You can say it. Some of them are a mess. I'll say it.
I know this year that Hougang will not be playing in Hougang Stadium, but simply because of the renovation they're doing there. It's not ideal, but as we said, it's going to be quite a long road. But I understand your point, Neil, that you do want to create that environment around the stadium with the fans and with those halls at Hougang, for an example, and then you build on that with the community, with the schools, with the kids in that community,
Yes.
and then you bring them all together and you create a nice community there. The stuff we do at Active SG, we bring all those kids to the stadiums from around the areas. We got up to 3,000 kids in our academy. At Queenstown, I have 280
Brilliant.
kids, I think.
Brilliant.
Hougang, I think it's similar. So if we built on that kind of community spirit, I don't see why we can't bring more attraction to the club. But you're right, we need to keep the clubs in the locations. But like I said, at the moment, we're just going through a phase
That's
where
okay.
probably there's a reconstruction.
Yeah,
stadium.
that's a short-term thing. I mean, I don't want to keep harking back to the old days, but the template was there at the beginning.
Right.
Sembawang, Woodlands, Tanjong Pagar, Tampines,
Tampines,
Geylang.
Geylang.
You had a east, north, south, west bases of sorts to build upon. And then, of course, late 90s, economic crisis, everybody panicked, and then we started throwing out clubs everywhere. We had like Milton Keynes type clubs turning up everywhere, you know.
Sinchi.
You know, Pongal,
Beijing,
Sengkang, Marine that wasn't in
Mm.
Sengkang and this and that. Keep the clubs in the communities, let them build. It takes time.
But that brings us to this.
It does.
This other comment, which is a counterpoint to all your arguments, Mr. GHYGC.
Yeah, have a longer acronym
Yeah.
next time.
Singapore is too small and people are too mobile. They move from Jurong to Sengkang, they relocate too easily to execute a hometown concept. That's the gist of his comment. That's exactly to rebut your point. But I think it's possible. Whenever you move to a new place, there's also always if the club is there to support, you would naturally gravitate to the club. I mean, if you want to be really dedicated, it's just a 40-minute drive from Jurong to Tampines, just to support Tampines if you want to. It's not.
Before I come in, Dan, what do you think about that? It's a common excuse. We hear it a lot. Singapore's too small to build up a hardcore base for specific clubs.
Yes, that is one of the biggest problems here. But the beauty of it is if you do move, you can, like Han Keong said, you can go back and watch your team, which you support very easily. You don't have to have a 3-hour drive to get there.
Precisely.
But to have that community spirit and that sort of feeling of ownership of your club is very hard to create because we are so close. But like I said before, if we can get the atmosphere in the stadium and people coming to support, it would be incredible. It would be absolutely incredible. And it would only build from there. It's like the chicken and the egg. What's going to come first? And I think the fans, if they just support a little bit more, then we can really turn this league around.
Yeah. I'm going to pull out my size doesn't matter card one more time. I've never accepted this Singapore is too small argument, right? Singapore is roughly the same size as London, Greater London aside. But London and Singapore are fairly comparable in size. Population-wise, Singapore's getting close to 6 million. London is 8 million plus. Right? And I checked. London, same size as Singapore, has 7 clubs alone that play in the English Premier League, has another 6 in the Football League, and has another 4 in the National League. So London, comparable size of Singapore, has 17 professional teams that play in the leagues of England. We can't accommodate 6 decent clubs in Singapore. I don't buy this size argument. And I won't accept this size argument. I think it's a bit of a cop-out. And this idea about allegiances when you move, I was born in the area of East London, so West Ham is my team. I lived in Australia, I lived in Singapore. West Ham is still my team. It doesn't really change, you know? A kid can be born and raised in Liverpool and move to Singapore. His team is still Liverpool. So this idea that just because you grew up in Toa Payoh and then you move to Sengkang, you can't support Balestier anymore is a bit weak.
I still support Woodlands. Just restart the team, please.
Yeah, of course. As long as the will is there and the interest is there and the commitment is there.
I will go back to Woodlands Stadium to support Woodlands Wellington if they just restart the team.
Yeah. He's desperate for his Woodlands. He wants his Woodlands to come back.
I want my Woodlands.
The Rams. It's the Rams, isn't it? Woodlands
Yes,
is the Rams.
Rams.
Yeah, bring back the Rams. Yeah. All right, we've got a quote here from a friend of ours, I think. Stanley Ho. Good old Stanley. We all know Stanley. Singapore football must face the realities of modern times. It's not competing against the Premier League or other European football fare. It is competing against people's time. Time that people can choose to be with their children, to watch Netflix, to bake, I'll come back to that, to do household chores, to play Xbox, to watch it play and so on. So without a compelling product, not many will make Singapore football their priority over the other stuff. Also, does DPMM or having Young Lions make the league a more compelling product? What else can we do to make it compelling? Now, Stanley is a friend of ours, and I reject the part about what. So I can't play football with my kid or watch football with my kid because I'm baking bread now? Is that where we are, Stanley? I've heard of some lame excuses about Singapore football, but baking bread might be the lowest yet. But I take the general point, and it is a good point, which is I've said in the past that I believe, and I still do believe, that one of the reasons the S League declined is because it happened to coincide with the explosion of cable television and the internet at the same time in the late 90s. Very unfortunate timing. And it was impossible to compete. Why should I go watch the S League when I can, on the old SCV, as it was then, watch Liverpool Man U at 8 p.m., 9 p.m.? It became a problem. I now believe that's not quite the case. And this is where I agree with Stanley's point. You still have to make the product compelling. It doesn't have to be successful, but it has to be compelling. And it still has to have an element of professionalism. Right. So that I agree with. You can't just make people turn up and say, oh, it's a Singapore product, you must watch.
Right.
No, it's got to be a half-decent product first.
Definitely. In order to, have them think, oh yeah, I can spend maybe 3 hours of my time, evening time, to just sit down in a stadium to watch. You need a perfectly good reason for them to sit down there and watch. You cannot say, I just give it, put it there, and then, if you want to come lah. No lah, I don't think this is the right attitude for thing. You must make each team must put in the effort to make the product compelling. Do your groundwork, do your grassroots things, get them hyped up to come down and watch. Give them a reason to sit down there for 3 hours every night to just watch a football match. Might not be that good, but must be competitive and compelling.
Yeah, I mean, I can see Dan stewing on this one. Before people jump in and go, oh, that's your Man U Liverpool argument. By that rationale, everyone in England would just support Man U and Liverpool because they're putting out the best product over the years. That's not what I'm saying at all. Because by that rationale, why would anybody watch Dagenham and Redbridge, which was my local team growing up, or even West Ham, or even Wrexham, if you use that analogy? That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, or at least what I'm saying is, when you watch a Dagenham and Redbridge or a Wrexham, you know it's going to be a professional, well-run outfit, mostly, right? There's going to be it's just going to be an air of professionalism about the whole place. They're not going to win every week. Often these teams are going to lose as many games as they win. But when you go there, you're going to see a decent value for money product. And I think most Singaporeans would want the same.
What I'd like to say is, looking at Stanley's comment there, I think we've got too tied up and trying to miss all the other things that people do. In the end, we have to create a product that people want to come to, whether those other things are on or not. I mean, if you really want to watch Singapore football, you come. You can even have your phone watching the games on.
You can bake while you're watching the game.
You can do two things at once.
Yeah.
So I think we've got so tied up, and the problem I think now is that we're playing the games in the afternoon. We don't sit in the evenings and play the games. I can tell you, it's hot.
It's too hot.
I mean,
it's ridiculous.
I played against some of those Premier League teams when they came to Singapore, and I've seen them come on tours before. They struggle.
Yeah,
they struggle like hell. So it's already a difficulty playing in this heat. We can't play at the same speed and tempo as those teams in Europe because of the weather. And then when you put those games to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's absolute murder. We're warming up when the sun's really out at sort of 4:30. Yeah. And that first half, sometimes you see the boys can't run. And I'm sure that some teams plan that second half they put those maybe quicker, more explosive players on, and so they can damage the teams when the opposition are down. So it's really a bad time to start, and I think it's time we start trying to have a little bit more confidence in our league and not worrying so much about the baking and other things. All right, Stanley.
I couldn't agree more. And the weather part is such a key part here because I don't know why we're doing this anyway. How many times have you seen, I've covered events, you've covered events, Singapore Marathon, triathlon events, where the top runners will come across the world, the Kenyans will come over, and their timings are way below their PBs. Because they
of the
just
heat.
don't run in this humidity regularly. These are professional athletes who run marathons for a living. Nobody is ever going to set a personal best. No international athlete is ever going to set a personal best in Singapore without heat and humidity.
That's what hurts the boys here as well. When we get comments to say that, well, we're not as fit as those, and they bring up stats. And I've argued before with some of the people who take those stats and measure those distances. I've argued, well, you can't possibly compare us to Premier League players because it's a totally different environment.
Yeah.
Bring them here, have a game against us, and then see.
We've seen it. We've seen the teams when they come in pre-season, the EPL sides, Brazil when they came, Japan. All of the teams. All right, two things. One, they don't want to get injured. Yes, we get that. But it's the humidity. How many managers have you and I spoken to?
Yeah, every time they talk about is the humidity.
They talk about humidity. Yeah. They complain about the pitches, the artificial surfaces. But they always talk about these things. And the matches, and it's a much. When you watch the night games in Singapore, it's so much more fun. When I used to watch Tanjong Pagar under the floodlights, all games are better under the floodlights. Anyway, all games, but especially in Singapore, the whole atmosphere changes.
So maybe change the blind timing from 5:30 to maybe something like 7:30. All games.
All games. Yeah. And the last point, because it's such a good point that Dan makes about, have faith in our product and don't worry about these things so much. This is at an administrative level now, not the playing level. This idea, this guilt tripping that we sometimes see, you must watch the Singapore League because it's Singaporean, and if you're a true blue Singaporean. Quick analogy, I've had exactly the same thing in publishing, my neck of I write books and that, and there's a campaign called Buy Sing Lit. And I got into trouble by saying at a forum, that's a crap slogan. Don't make people buy Sing Lit just because it's Singaporean. Buy Sing Lit because it's good. Don't hide behind your national flag and guilt trip people into saying, you must support this product because it's local. No, you must support this product because it's well run, it's well organised, the players are well paid.
It's well worth your time.
It's a good spectacle, it's worth your time. Don't hide behind this flag. That's a cop-out.
That's the same thing you should do with Singapore football.
Yeah.
Make it a decent product, compelling product like we have kept saying. And then people will start to notice, and then you just take the FA Cup final, the Singapore Cup final. The Hougang played it was a brilliant game, exciting, thrilling game. Everybody was talking about it after the game. And you need this kind of games sprinkled throughout the season. I don't wish for every game. It might be too much to ask for every game to be this compelling, but every game should be this competitive and this passionate.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this thing up by giving Dan the man a controversial question to finish. VAR is coming to local football this season, right?
This season.
We've talked about it before. As a player yourself, what do you think?
I don't know what to say, Neil. I really don't.
Or just give us a broad view on VAR.
I mean, I don't say anything bad about the referees in Singapore. They do a good job. They do everything they can. They're definitely neutral. There's no match fixing here for sure. Everything is fair, but bringing in VAR at the moment, I don't think that's the biggest priority. If it works, fine, but I think having a little bit of controversy in games is always good. We want to keep up with the rest of the world. We want to do those things that the top leagues are doing. But I think there's a long way to go in other aspects before we get that right. But good luck to them.
Yeah.
That's all I can say if it works. But if things start to go wrong, now, well, that's another thing we're going to have to worry about dealing with. And we've got enough to deal with in Singapore football now, which we need to put right. So I hope it goes well.
That's exactly what we said.
We said exactly the same word for word. To me, VAR in Singapore football is a bit like, when you go to a really run-down hawker centre and it's falling apart, but they've got that Stylo-Milo cleaner that costs about $10,000, that cleaning robot. And you're thinking, forget the robot. The roof of the hawker centre's falling down. Fix the hawker centre. Sod the
bring in
robot.
better hawkers.
That's VAR in Singapore football. We've got 50 guys in the stadium and Stylo-Milo tech. Let's just get the fans in the stadium, get a decent product, and then worry about the tech. But what do you think, most importantly? Should we bring VAR into Singapore football? Will it make a positive difference or not? Should, more importantly, all Singaporean games be played at night? Yes, they should. Send all your comments and questions too.
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_MY on TikTok, on Twitter.
Get it right.
And Yahoo SEA on TikTok. get it wrong.
We
for
have
one time.
millions of followers on
Sorry
TikTok, more
about
than
that,
Harry
man.
Styles. Get it
Shall
right.
we do it again? No,
All right. Thank you very much for watching us.
Yep. Catch us on Wednesdays and Thursday nights at 9 p.m. on YouTube. That's our premiere.
You're very slick this week. You're very
Very
professional.
slick today.
You're on it this
Need
week.
to get it
You're
right.
on it. You're on
I'm
it.
getting more kicks.
Dan, thank you very much.
Thank
Wrexham legend. And how many Singapore clubs have you played for?
You might want to ask how many I haven't played for.
It's at
there-
least
is there any
4 or
club
5, right?
Yeah,
I'll be right, it's not
I
yet.
play for Warriors SAF twice.
Yeah.
Play for Woodlands, play for Geylang, play for Balestier, play for Tampines, play for Tanjung Pagar.
Everyone.
There you go.
There you go.
More
Well
clubs
done.
than Rory McIlroy. See, I've changed the joke this time. Right, thank you very much for watching. Thanks to Dan Bennett for coming in, and we'll see you all again, same time, same place next week. Take
Sweet.
care.
Take care.